Hello everybody, this is Tech with Gearhead Gaming, and today, in this video, I am going over the Paladin cards from the Witchwood. Paladin's in a pretty decent spot going into this rotation. Dude Paladin has lost some cards, but not a whole lot, and I think with some slight retooling it's going to be able to get there and remain a Tier 1 deck. It still has the weakness that's not particularly good against one of the other Tier 1 decks going into this rotation, which is the Control/Q blocks, basically anybody running Possessed Lackey plus Void Lord, but just its power level is so good and the things that it's doing are so strong that I have to imagine that it's still going to remain a Tier 1 deck, given that it's not losing that much. I think that in addition, we could even, as sort of a more radical retooling, see an even costed, again, Greymane type Paladin list. You run a bunch of 2-drops, you run Call to Arms, you run Sunkeeper Tarim. There's a lot of things that you can keep in there. I don't think that's going to be the best option, because I think that Righteous Protector and Lost in the Jungle are just really, really good. I think that Divine Favor also has a pretty good claim to being one of the reasons why you shouldn't run even Paladin, but I think that there's the ability to do that. You probably run some more Drygulch Jailers, you run an Equality, you run Spellbreakers, right? There's a lot of cards you're able to run in an even costed Paladin and still be very, very strong. So it's a possibility. It could be the best variant of Dude Paladin. But either way, I expect Dude Paladin to remain a Tier 1 deck going forward. And the question is, what are we adding to that, right? Well, first off, we have Hidden Wisdom, which is probably not one of the cards we're going to add to this. Obviously, drawing 2 cards for 1 mana is great, but just like with Rat Trap, the ability for your opponent to play around this seems way too high. I do still, like Rat Trap, assign this a meta significance of 2 stars rather than just the bare bottom 1 star, because I think your opponents are still going to have to play around this. Even if nobody's running it, they're still going to have to think to themselves, man, I don't want to trigger Hidden Wisdom. But I think that even though it's very powerful to draw 2 cards for 1 mana, and even I think it's pretty powerful to draw 2 cards for 1 mana, maybe like 5 turns after you played this, I think it's just too easy to play around, and I don't think it's quite where you're looking to do in a lot of these Paladin decks anyway. So I think this card is a pass. I think they wanted to print a secret that wasn't too strong, because they have also printed some secret synergy in this list set, and printing too powerful a secret would be, would make Paladin even more broken. But yeah, all that means is that this card just isn't very good, and I don't think it's going to see much play. Next up, we have Cathedral Gargoyle. I mean, if consistently I was getting a shielded mini-bot with Taunt, that's fantastic, right? I mean, that's really definitely at the power level that I want to be at for Constructed. But 1, this card doesn't work very well with Call to Arms, doesn't really play nice. And 2, I need to have a dragon. I don't think Paladin even has any class dragons, right? I mean, this is not an archetype that exists yet. So even though this card's very strong when it's doing what it wants to do, there's no deck that lets it do what it wants to do. So I'll give this just a 1 star. Maybe later, maybe after some dragons are printed, but it's possible Blizzard just never prints any Paladin dragons, and this is all we have. So 1 star. Next up, we have Rebuke, and this card, in terms of raw power, I don't think is very good, right? Loatheb gave you a 5/5 for 5 mana plus this effect, right? That's like a fairly costed minion on 5, and Loatheb's fantastic, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's a very strong card in Wild these days. This is a Loatheb effect, but I'm still paying a card, and I'm not getting any body for it. Just in terms of raw power level, this isn't where I want to be at, but at the same time, this is a great tech card for Dude Paladin, which I consider a Tier 1 deck, against the other established Tier 1 deck in the format, which is Control/Q block, right? This is a card that lets you keep your board after you've established it. This is the card you play on turn 6 alongside Call to Arms, because next turn you're going to pound your opponent in the face, and if you can just stop them from clearing your board, you're going to win. This card is a lot of times what aggro needs to succeed against Control, and because even though I don't think the power level is very high, and I think this is kind of overcosted for what you're doing, I think that this card is going to see play as a tech card specifically for this meta. I can't help but give it a 4 stars on meta significance, even if I think maybe like an expansion from now this card sees no play. Yeah, this card is going to be something for now, and that's really all there is to say about it. It's good in a particular situation, and we happen to be in that particular situation. Sound the Bells. Maybe if mid-range Paladin was more of a thing, this would see some play. But I don't even think the raw power level is really where I want to be at in Constructed. I want to see kind of more buff Paladin stuff going on before I really signed off on this card. I don't think just kind of in a void, in a vacuum, without the quest, without Linessa, without any of this other stuff, this card would be that good. So yeah, I'm not super sold on this card. I don't think it's going to be played very much at all. I give it 1 star. Paragon of Light. This is a really solid card. Even just a Direwolf can turn it on, and any sort of buff, of course, turns it on. And a 3 mana 2/5 with Taunt and Lifesteal is pretty good, especially if you consider that you're buffing that card. That becomes a really strong card against aggressive decks in particular. But I don't know. Like as good as this card is, and as obvious as the synergies are with buffs and it being able to heal, which procs all the when you get healed X happens type things. Even with all that, excuse me, I don't see the deck that this card gets played in. I don't think that this is something that Dude Paladin wants. I think that's the direction that Paladins are going in right now. This is more of a mid-range card. I just don't think this quite gets there, even though I think it is a very solid card. I'm still giving it some meta significance because I think, if Dude Paladin wasn't the direction we were going in, this would be a great card. And maybe Dude Paladin even runs this in a particular meta where like Dude Paladin is taken over, because this card is pretty good against Dude Paladin. But still, I can't say that this card is going to be a staple in some really top tier deck, even given that I think it does a lot of things you want to do. I'm only giving it 3 stars. Bellringer Sentry, though, this card's strong. Even when you're only pulling, let's say you pull Noble Sacrifice twice. With your Battlecry and Death Rattle, you pull Noble Sacrifice. This card is still pretty good, right? It's a 3/4 for 4 mana that pulled 2/2/1 taunts. I mean, that's solid. It thins my deck as well. I think it's a little bit weaker now because you kind of don't have a lot of cards you want with this. You're going to be running Redemption, and you're going to be running this card, and you'll probably run like a Repentance in there. You'll have to dilute your deck a little bit, but I think this card's going to be played around with a lot. I think this is one of the cards that potentially could be part of the retooling that Paladin wants to see to continue on with Dude Paladin. And I definitely think it's going to be tried out a lot. And I think that if another good secret gets printed, this card is a slam dunk for Paladin. But barring that, I don't know. The card's good. I think it'll see play. I think it'll see more play over time with more expansions. I'm not sold on it being like a meta-defining game-breaking card in this expansion, though. It's just good, right? 5 stars out of 7. Then we have the Glass Knight. This is a very solid mid-range card. I think it's a little bit more flexible than Paragon of Light because it doesn't really need the setup. A 4/3 with Divine Shield is still just a good card, even if you're not restoring any health. This is all still a good card. So I rate it a little bit higher than Paragon of Light because it's even costed, one, which I think is relevant for Paladin, but 2, because I think it requires a little bit less setup. And I think overall this is just a good card that whose time probably has not come in this expansion, but I wouldn't be surprised to see even just next expansion this card seeing a significant amount of play. The guy's usually just a value powerhouse because by himself he's fine, and then with synergies he becomes even better. That's to me the definition of a constructed card that's going to see play. Ghostly Charger. I mean, if I compare this to past cards, Blackwing Corruptor is the one that comes to mind. Blackwing Corruptor, of course, was a 5 mana 5/4 that dealt 3 damage when it entered the battlefield. It took a little bit of setup, but that setup wasn't that hard given the support that it had. This is that, but just with 2 less attack, right? Because you're going to take your Divine Shield and you're going to run it into something, and there you go, right? Like, you dealt 3 damage to something and you're left with a 3/4 body. I don't think this is big enough to do what you want to do. If this was a 4/4, I think this card would see play. But it has to be bigger than a 3/4. It has to have some advantage over Blackwing Corruptor, I think, to really make it in this meta. Prince Liam. I try and envision the deck in which this guy fits, and I can't see it. Because I'm basically I'm a deck with a bunch of 1-cost cards in my deck, right? And I kind of want to turn them into legendary minions, so maybe they're not even secrets, because then my Bellringer sentries get turned off, and then like I'm some sort of like aggressive deck, but then I'm also a mid-range deck that's hoping to win in the late game with Prince Liam legendaries. I don't know what's going on. I really struggle to see where this card's going to fit. I'm thinking that he's probably just a meme. The power level's fine. He's a fine body on his own, and the effect is decent. But I just don't think there's an archetype that wants him, and I don't think there's a meta that wants him either. I don't think this guy's going to win you the long games as a mid-range deck. I don't think you want to be playing that mid-range deck. So, yeah, I'm passing on Prince Liam here. And then finally we have Silver Sword. 8 mana, 3/4. After your hero attacks, give your minions +1/+1. Well, not bad. I mean, I'm casting basically Mark of the Lotus every time I swing with this. That's fine. Vine Cleaver was basically casting Living Roots, in a sense, or Lost in the Jungle, really, every time I attack with it. But this costs 1 mana more, and I don't think a 3/4 weapon is better than a 4/3 weapon. And I don't think that this effect is better than what Vine Cleaver is offering. So I think this card is almost just strictly worse than Vine Cleaver. They kind of fit in the same decks, but I think Vine Cleaver is just better. It is somewhat relevant, though, and I'm going to give it 2 stars on meta significance because it is even costed. So if you're looking for a replacement for Vine Cleaver in your even costed deck, maybe you run this. I think you actually just run Tyrion Fordering, though. That's my thought. Like, just run Tyrion. Tyrion's going to give you a weapon, too, and Tyrion's Tyrion. The guy's pretty strong. So yeah, I don't see this seeing play, but I see some people testing out it with like Even Paladin, and if Even Paladin becomes a big thing, maybe this is the card you choose to run in your 8-drop slot. I don't know. Maybe you run this plus Tyrion Fordering, perhaps. But I think this card is just 1 mana too much for what it's giving to really make it as a constructed card. That's my verdict on it. And there you have it. That is all the Paladin cards for the Witchwood. Hope this helps. I'll see you next class set review.